Hello and welcome to Roger and Me, aka Roger Ebert and Me, a weekly movie review podcast inspired by Siskel and Ebert at the movies, Ebert and Roper, all of those shows. But this is not affiliated with those shows at all. We are two film critics covering every new movie that comes out every week. I am Mark Dusick of MarkReviewsMovies.com. My co-host is Brett Arnold of the New Flesh podcast and other such places. I don't know if he's going to say them yet. We'll have to talk about that at some point
Oh
because you
yeah, I
do
write.
have a weekly column now.
Yes, I have a weekly column at Yahoo Entertainment where I talk about movies that are available on streaming services you're now paying for, and also when things are like available to rent or buy at home at great expense. Like Captain America, for example, out today for a cool $25. If you care about such things.
Yeah, even me giving that a positive review, I'd say wait for that to drop a little bit, or it's going to end up on Disney Plus at some point.
Yes.
So hold off on that. Yeah, I was one of the few positive reviews of that. So anyway, that's beside the point. The point is, if you know this show and you listen to it on Spotify, no, yeah, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to leave a review, a comment, some kind of interaction with us. It really helps us get the show out there to people. That's just right up front because I usually forget it. So I'm going to say it right now. But with all that out of the way, this week we have six new movies, including Sinners from Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan in two performances, an animated film called Sneaked about talking sneakers. We will definitely be talking about that one. The Wedding Banquet, a remake of an early Ang Lee film, and a lot of other things, including David Cronenberg's latest, The Shrouds, which I think is going to be a little bit of a contentious conversation, but we'll find out. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see how much passion there is behind it. First movie up, though, is the biggest one of the week. That is Sinners, the aforementioned film from Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld, and a lot of other people put in some very good work here. But we'll get to that soon. Here is the trailer.
I've been all over this world. I seen men die in ways I ain't even know was possible. Hey, brother, be careful. I will. With all the things that I seen, I ain't ever seen no demons, no ghosts, no magic.
It is hard to distill all that's going on in Sinners in a trailer, let alone a partial bit of a trailer that we're showing you here. So, Mark, please tell me, how do you even begin to describe Sinners?
It's yeah, it is tough to describe because the story keeps changing as it goes, and that's not a bad thing. I just want to point that out. That's not a bad thing because it does keep you on your toes, and it's always doing something different, even when it's doing all of those things different across the whole story. The basics of it is it's Michael B. Jordan as twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, who return to small town rural Mississippi after some time in Chicago. They're going to open up a juke joint in town, just outside of town. That's their new business operation, their new scheme to try to make some money. And that's the setup, but where it goes is I know the trailers are giving it all away. It's very annoying the trailers are giving it all away because it's so different and unique even before it gets there because it is just this story about these two characters and all the people that they know, all of their interactions. They have a couple of romances and love interests going on. They have a cousin who's very talented as a blues musician. He's a young guy who's, wants to become a, a professional and famous blues musician. Um, there are like just local shop owners who come into play here, and they're just trying to set up a party. That's what it is. They're just setting up a party for the locals because it's 1932 in Mississippi. Most of the characters are black, and there's a lot of terrible things happening around them. And they just want to forget about that for a night and enjoy themselves. And when the film is setting that up, and when it actually gets to the party, it's so much fun because you're just watching all of this unfold. But there is also a supernatural element that's suggested from the very beginning, that there are hints of it throughout, and eventually the film becomes a horror story and it becomes an action movie. But even when it's doing those things, it's doing them in a slightly different way. And I appreciated the fact that it is just such a unique film because
Yeah, yeah.
you can't just say it's this thing.
No.
At any given time it's doing one thing and then it's doing something else, but it all fits together in some way.
There's a musical element to it that I was not aware of at all. I also I avoided the trailers for this, so I didn't know there were two Michael B. Jordans. I didn't know anything about it. So I was just delighted and like shocked and impressed by it throughout. And I like that we haven't said what happens and like the distinctness of what happens. And there's a movie I could compare it to that would give away exactly the type of structure it is and what happens in the second half. And I won't mention it. But now I'm wondering, did that trailer give it away? You know what I mean? Like,
I
did the
assume it
trailer?
did.
Yeah, like I just have no idea. But that movie was big for me growing up on cable, and clearly it was big for Ryan Coogler too. Because what I like about this movie is how much it wears its influences on its sleeve, of which many of them he's name checked in the press already and stuff like that. And what's most interesting about this movie to me is how many ideas are stuffed into it. Like, yes, it does eventually become like a genre movie that it was teasing the whole time, and it like the whole second half, there's a whole portion of the movie that is that, but it's all steeped in like racial politics of that era. And you could watch this movie as a metaphor for Ryan Coogler, like saying, talking about like not selling you're selling your soul versus making art, and like how you do that and keep your cool. And like there's so many things you could put on this movie and take away from it. And Mark, there's a standout sequence. I think everyone will know it when they see it in this movie that like transcends time, let's just say, and it has the musical element. And that's when the movie is at its peak, I would say. And if I have any complaint, Mark, I'm like, why isn't that element more foregrounded? Because it does come into play plenty throughout, and it ends up being a big through line throughout the movie. But it does. That's where if I have to talk negative about this movie, which I don't want to, because I really just want to say this movie rocks. It's so cool to see a director use their blank check after making like, he's been in the Marvel system for like a decade, right? Making Black Panther and Black Panther 2. And now he's using his cachet to make this big original movie that, yes, it's original. It is so original despite ultimately becoming something you've seen before, is what I'm trying to say. Because of that buildup, it has like an hour of just luxuriating with these characters and and where they live, and the production design is great, and it's shot in 65 millimeter IMAX, and it's beautiful to look at. And I just think it's like overstuffed in a way that I like appreciate. You know what I mean? Like I kind of appreciate the gall of this movie, and I appreciate how horny it is for a mainstream studio picture. It has very interested in sex, and there's like a running joke about going down on a woman throughout the movie that comes up. I think there must be 5 or 6 characters that talk about cunnilingus in this movie, like to a point where it's like, okay, Ryan Coogler has a fixation on this, and it's something we should interrogate. Maybe I'm waiting for someone to bring it up to him, but I say that to say this movie's just full of surprises in big ways and little ways, and I think it also has really interesting things to say about Christianity and cultural appropriation, and I think all of that comes through in the story it's telling, even when it becomes a genre picture, the way that it unfolds. Does that make any sense?
It does. You know what it feels like to me? It feels like a lost or forgotten piece of American folklore that we just, that someone came up with. Do you know the old story about the blues? blues guitarist who sold his soul allegedly at
To
the
the
crossroads
yes,
and all that. It
yes,
feels
yes,
like something like that. It feels like
yes,
this is the night that that blues guitarist played his first gig at this juke joint in Mississippi and all hell broke loose. That's what it feels
right,
like. It feels like something that's pulled from all of this. And it pulls, when it becomes a genre film, it's pulling from one of the most famous creatures, supernatural creatures that you could
yeah,
think of. And I also like the way that that fits in terms of the folklore too, because those creatures, I don't want to say too much. Those creatures are monstrous, but they're not
yeah,
monsters. I like the fact that they are somewhat pitiable and
yeah,
sympathetic to a degree because they have that same love of music as the main
yes.
character, the one of the main characters, the cousin
But
does. And there's a
but
connection there.
there is, and what I love about that is the insidious nature that, like, that we see people talk about today in cultural criticism. Like, a lot of white culture is just like taking from black culture,
Yeah, yeah.
and the movie is getting at that through its genre-ness. Like, that's what I think is impressive, is that, like, he gets at these huge ideas. I just am always going to appreciate a big swing where you can take a scalpel to this and pull out a bunch of different metaphors about what he's saying about art versus, like, Jesus. Even, like, he's saying, like, Jesus isn't gonna help you, but your creativity might. Like, there's amazing stuff there to mine. There's just so much going on that, like, it's overwhelming, frankly. And if anything, Mark, I don't know if you felt this way, I was almost a little let down when it became a genre movie, because, like, the genre movie it becomes, we're so familiar with the trappings of that, like, it's like, yeah, okay, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen, and I enjoyed it watching it happen. But it was, like, less surprising than it was before when it just becomes like that. But then it still ends in a place that I really enjoyed, and it comes
Oh,
together. Um,
yeah.
and I should stay. People should stay for the credits to
Definitely.
see, like,
Stay at least through the mid-credit scene. You will know it
yes,
when it comes up because it's a big scene. It's a coda. It's a whole epilogue
it's
to
like
the
a
film.
true
That's
ending to the
yeah,
movie. Yeah,
yeah, it's important. It's an important part of the movie if you stick around through the credits. I'm surprised actually that it was in the middle of the credits instead of right at the end.
yeah. I don't love that. That's maybe the one Marvel trait that stuck with him, is that
Yeah.
I must do a post credit sequence.
It's such a key part to the movie though. It's surprising. But you're
Yeah,
right. I think maybe when it does become the genre movie, when it becomes the horror and the action, it is a little bit on the nose and familiar or whatever. But I brought up the whole thing about who the foes are, the creatures are, because that does make it different. Because you did bring up like
yeah,
these ideas of cultural appropriation and everything, but it's also
yeah,
about the connection because, uh, well, I'll say as the leader of the gang that's eventually comes down upon the juke joint is played by Jack O'Connell, and
yeah.
he's an Irish version of this,
Yes.
and
Oh, this.
it brings up the
Yeah,
whole idea of how Irish folk music is sort of a way to tackle the oppression that was going on there at the time when that character was around. It's I just really like all these connections. It's so neat. So even when it is just doing a lot of blood and a lot of shooting and a lot of stabbing and all that other stuff, I'm still invested in it because it's still
yes,
coming
I
up with
agree.
ideas. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
so neat.
it's so interesting. I think the guy specifically mentions at one point, Christian missionaries coming to
Yeah,
Ireland being, like, bad, and, like, that being, like, the way that they're trying to establish a relationship with the black people, to be like, the Jim Crow South, we get it. Like, we're fellow oppressed victims, but the movie has such a, I just appreciate that it doesn't, like, you know, have, like, a why can't we all get along message that you'd expect, like, a liberal kind of movie to have. It just is like, no, man, white people can be insidious, and they were, and they have been throughout history, and, like, it doesn't really shy away from depicting that, and I appreciated that. And it is, as you say, it, like, the having all that weight behind it gives the genre movie, makes it feel new, I guess, is what we're saying. The more I think about this movie, and the more I reflect on it, it's been like a week since I've seen it, and I just am dying to see it again. I saw it in regular IMAX, but I know it's playing in 10 locations in the country, or the world, I think, in 70 millimeter IMAX, and it was shot on film. So I do want to go see it that way, and I probably will next week. So you might have an updated review from me. But for now, I think this is, like, as solid a 3-star movie as a 3-star movie goes. I'm open to it being a 3.5, 4-star movie in the future. I think it is like a big movie that I couldn't ingest the first time and fully take in all it's doing, because I didn't even think about some of those things until I got home later, when I was like, oh yeah, that's what that was, and that's what that was doing. Even, while you're watching it, you're just kind of like enjoying the ride, because it is such a great, like, it's really great at putting you there. And the score from, what's that dude's name, Ludwig Göransson, is got like the blues guitar, but it's also fused with like electronic music and other stuff. It's all just really, the word that comes to mind is bold. It's a very bold, ambitious, huge swing of a movie, and I'm delighted to see it. It appears to be like it's going to do pretty well, and I hope that it, breaks through in a way, and that I hope he doesn't go back to Marvel to make Black Panther 3, even though, there's part of me that's like, Black Panther was awesome. That's fine. But Black Panther 2 was not awesome. So I don't know. Anyway, Sinners is great. I think it's really, really, really cool stuff. And I have any misgivings I feel like are just chalked up to like the fact that like this isn't a movie made by a committee. This is a singular vision, and it is messy in that way that a singular vision can be. And that's something to celebrate, not nitpick. So I had a great time at Sinners, and I fully recommend it. And I'm happy for Ryan Coogler that he got to make this big, sprawling movie, and he got to make it clearly the way he wanted. I don't think any WB executives were like, could we have one more character reference cunnilingus? That would be great for us, actually. So,
yeah, this was do what you want to do. This clearly was. But it is
Yeah.
funny that Warner Brothers, their two big movies that they're actually like getting behind and putting out in theaters and all that, they both feature dual dual performances. Because the last one was Alto Nights,
That's
where
right.
Robert De Niro played two gangsters, and this one has Michael B. Jordan playing two twins. Just weird kismet, I guess. I don't know. Um, yeah, I also really like this because it takes so many big swings, but it lets you luxuriate in the little details of the characters and the relationships and the music. The music so much. The music is such a key part of this, and it's that that alone, not just the soundtrack. The soundtrack is great because you're right. It does bring in like blues and heavy metal and everything else during that sequence that blends past, present, and future, which is the standout sequence, period, in the film. But just the music that's actually in the movie too. Um, yeah, it is maybe a little disappointing that it does become a genre movie, but since it sets it up right at the start, you do know it's going to get there. But even when it's doing that, it's a lot of fun. Um, I
Yeah,
had
and I
a,
have a horror
I had a,
podcast, so like I love a
yeah,
genre
exactly.
movie. So how
Yeah,
mad could I be, right?
exactly. Yep. But I'm also giving this a solid 3 stars too.
I love it. Sinners, go see it in theaters. Go see it in IMAX if it's playing near you in IMAX, especially if it's in 70mm near you. It's very rare if it's in 70mm near
Yeah,
you.
if you somehow are near the 70mm IMAX, it, you owe it to yourself to go see it that way, just
Yeah,
because.
there you can tell. Even I'm sure the digital print you saw, like that it's shot on film. There are sequences that really pop where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this would look really good in IMAX. I really need to go see this in IMAX the right way. All right. So
Unfortunately,
that's
Chicago has no IMAX theater.
I
Like
know.
legit.
Chicago got rid of the Navy Pier IMAX, which was a real IMAX theater, and I
Yep.
haven't heard an explanation for why or how that happened. Like, I just don't understand how
I
the
don't know.
city of Chicago doesn't have an IMAX theater. It's really fucked up. Isn't there one like Indiana or something? That's like,
Indianapolis, one of the museums in Indianapolis has a 70mm IMAX.
why? Like, not no
I don't know.
disrespect to
No,
Indianapolis.
yeah, I no,
but like
none.
Chicago not having one and Indianapolis having one feels off. Or
It
they should
does.
both have one. I
Yeah.
think that is the next stage of cinema, though, is like they're gonna have to build more things like that, because those are like the things that are selling out now. Is like the event style, big premium formats. Which, hey, I'm all about.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And I'm just gonna throw in some inside baseball like I love to do, but it would be
please.
nice if studios stopped trying to push the fake IMAX at like one of the worst movie theaters in the
Oh,
city on critics
I
because
saw this in
not
fake
great.
IMAX, as I said, and I could get into this whole thing where when it's fake IMAX and they're trying to replicate what they do in real IMAX with the aspect ratio changes, they kind of are arbitrarily making the black bars appear through most of the movie just so they can make them disappear. and it be impactful. Like that, it would fit the screen otherwise. Like they made a choice to do that, so it also drives me fucking nuts because that's not
Yeah.
how it's supposed to be. It's like well, it's approximating what the 70 millimeter would do, which is like,
Yeah.
I get the idea, but it's stupid. Most people don't care about that shit. But as a projectionist, if the masking's not there and the bars are there, I'm pissed already. So watching a whole
Masking? What
movie like
masking?
that, yeah, what masking? Masking doesn't exist anymore.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Oh God, we're just two old guys yelling at clouds now.
Yeah,
But
I know. Exactly.
we'll we'll
Sorry, I
move
didn't mean to
on.
do that.
No, I love it. People will enjoy. Here is the trailer for David Cronenberg's The Shrouds.
When they lowered my wife into the coffin, I had an intense urge to get into the box with her.
You never considered cremation?
How dark are you willing to go? Those are the shrouds.
You mean like burial shrouds?
Not exactly. It's basically a kind of camera in her grave.
Don't you find it hard to take?
It comforts me.
It's like she's floating in outer space.
Word of warning. If they shrouds can be weaponized, people will find a way to do it.
I don't begrudge anyone who doesn't appreciate this movie. I don't
you.
think this will be that contentious for that reason, because like this feels like a movie made for the huge Cronenberg fans who think he's a genius and lap up everything he does, which is me, and I think this is a brilliant 4-star masterpiece of a movie after 3 viewings. I don't know if I felt that way after the first viewing. It's a rich text and there's a lot going on in it. And it's one of those movies where like it requires metatextual knowledge of David Cronenberg's wife dying recently to like be maximum impactful. And when I think you know that, it becomes this deeply, deeply moving, profound thing that is just someone trying to deal with their grief and how unknowable it is. But we always see horror movies about grief and other movies about grief, but I've never seen it done in this way before, where it's like almost like it's so just vulnerable in its like the worries you have as someone, like the possessiveness you have over somebody else's body. Like I feel like it's very autocritical in that way. I don't know. I think it's just so interesting and I could talk about it for hours. But please tell me what the movie's about.
Yeah, so the movie is about Vincent Cassel's character. Vincent Cassel looks a lot like Cronenberg.
Styled like David Cronenberg, yes.
Yeah, styled like him. Whose wife, played by Diane Kruger, dies from cancer. That literally ate away at her body, and he couldn't handle it, and so he came up with this invention that is a burial shroud that acts as a sort of CT scan or MRI that is always taking a full 3D image of the wife's decomposing body so that he can watch that process happen and see her body whenever he wants to. Um, Very, very dark. And I really did appreciate the opening act or so that is so frank and blunt and forthright about the fact this is about death. This is about grief. This is about how it is something that you cannot quite comprehend, even that you need something like I don't know, just the entire idea. Like you think about these rituals that we have, like the entire idea of a funeral is almost like just so that you can know, like, oh yeah, that person who lived and existed and I knew is now body. Like the same thing with this, just that you need that proof that the person is gone and what is going on. There's a lot going on here. Just, and you're right, it brings up things that people don't usually talk about when it comes to death and mourning and all that. And I like that a lot because it is honest. And then the movie turns and it lost me. And I saw it 2 times because I knew you loved it, and I'm like, I'm gonna give it a second chance. So I watched it twice, and once it starts going down the road of the conspiracy stuff, it just lost me. And I can't quite place exactly why the movie does it. I don't get it. And I think you brought up a good point. It was something that I was kind of wrestling with, is that it is about the incomprehensibility of the conspiracy kind of connects to the idea of you cannot comprehend grief and death to a degree, but I don't think it's I didn't feel it working on that same level as it did with everything else that's going on in the movie, with the shroud and with his mourning and with all of the other stuff about him not being able to get back into his life and about wanting to possess her body in some way even when she was alive, and questioning whether or not that is healthy about the character. Just all of that stuff feels so bluntly honest that
Yeah.
everything else just feels it didn't work for me.
I mean,
That
if you're
part
not,
of it.
yeah,
That
I
part
get
of
it. If you're not taking the conspiracy stuff, and the first time I definitely wasn't, I was trying to understand it. It was definitely annoying. And then when you realize it's like the movie Burn After Reading, which is my comparison, where it's like the whole thing is this joke and a satire of like, it's unknowable, you idiot. It's not this. It's not that. It's not that. It's just like, it's all unraveling. By the time Guy Pearce is saying something, what's the line? It's like, he said like they're talking about the Russian and the Chinese, and he goes, the mistake is that the people that helped you were Russian, and he's like, yeah, it turns out because of the Chinese. And I was like, okay, this movie knows what it's doing. Like, it's being very silly about the conspiracy and how people like turn to conspiracy in times of, you know, grief or tragedy to try and make sense of it, but it's not something that's going to end up helping. And I think this movie's about that. It's about, like all Cronenberg movies, technology. And it's so interesting to see Cronenberg deal with technology after death, because his movies are always about technology and merging with the bodies in interesting ways. So it's such a, I love that this, you know, possibly the last Cronenberg movie. He says in interviews, the world doesn't need another Cronenberg movie, which he's so wrong. We do. But it's just such, I just feel like Cronenberg fans are feasting for sure. In terms of like him, you could obviously it's a self-insert character for him, and it's about a guy who's exploiting bodies, which he's been accused of. You know, he does body horror. So like, there's so many layers to this. But like, just the scenes that are dream sequences with him and his wife, that's as she's slowly decaying from cancer, and like that's the body horror here. It's like, it's almost like a flippant, like, oh, you want to see David Cronenberg gross out body horror? Like, look at it now. Like, this is what it actually is like. It's like the self-critique of his past work that I'm so fascinated by too, where it's like just kind of the growth of David Cronenberg being like, this is what it looks like now versus what it looked like then. So I do feel like you need like massive amounts of context of his career or interest for this to work. But if you do have that stuff, I think it's incredible and the most personal he's ever been, but still working in the same registers he's always been, like the conspiracies that end up being, you know, going nowhere, and all that stuff. There's like 3 Diane Kruger characters, the twin sister of his dead wife, and then the AI. There's so much stuff going on with we're always looking at screens in this movie, which is so true to life. I'm looking at a screen right now while talking to Mark. I have another screen in my hand. Like, it's just, there's something about the idea of the digital space that he's talking about, and how like that's corrupted by corporate interests. I think that's really interesting in terms of like the conspiracy part that actually compels me. That's like actually talking about something interesting about like, yeah, well, everything would ultimately get, you know, capitalismed and commodified, and there would be a thing like the Shrouds in the future. I just, you know, it's somber in the way that Cronenberg movies are. It's awkward and stilted in the way his late movies exclusively are. It's got that droning Brian Eno-like Howard Shore score that sounds like a Howard Shore score from other Cronenberg movies. So it's just doing everything I want out of something like this. I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job of talking about it. I feel like I'm too close to this one. I love it too much. It just feels like a real movie about grief, whereas like every horror movie we watch purports to be about grief, and this one is like, no, like, I lost the person I have sex with. And I think he said in an interview at the premiere of this movie, or at the Q&A, like, you know, I lost my father, but I didn't have sex with my father. So like, losing a wife and a spouse is a completely different thing. And I've never seen that specific type of grief dealt with especially in such a vulnerable way, where it's like, yeah, this is how I feel. And like, it's not pretty, but like, this is what it looks like. And I like the ending that I thought was like curt before and just kind of ends without any resolution. Now I find like really deeply moving, that it's just like him. You can never like move past something like this. It'll always be with you, and that's it. And like you just have to keep on going. So like there's just so much going on here. It's a man reckoning with losing the love of his life after many years of marriage. It's just interesting. I think it's so interesting. And yes, there's tons of conspiracy stuff that because what is the plot of this movie?
The graveyard
the
is
cemetery
vandalized.
the graveyard is vandalized, and he's trying to figure out who did it and why. By the time it gets to though, what you can't trust what you see on your screens. I think it's so interesting, right? Like, he thinks that there's growth on the bones, but like what it ends up being, like all that stuff is like part and
If
parcel.
that is the case, that's the
Exactly.
thing. It's like you don't
Yeah.
know, and then there's also like a single line of dialogue that makes you think the entire thing doesn't even matter because maybe it's, maybe we've been
Right.
watching a character that we can't trust the entire time.
Yes.
It's interesting. But again, big puzzle that I don't think we're supposed to be able to piece together.
No.
And yeah, you could say that's some metaphor for grief, sure, but in terms of just the story, like to me, it almost feels like the same thing we complain about all the time. Like when you have something that is so on the nose, like a guy watching his dead wife's body decompose and not being able to get past her death and grieving that and everything else that goes with it. Why do you need the conspiracy plot to add that layer onto it? I got stuck there. And I do wonder what a different version of this movie that maybe just addresses that idea at the center of it more. And
then it
more
wouldn't be a Cronenberg movie, because I
well,
feel
would
like
it? I don't know.
because they all I feel like devolve into like conspirator. This is so much like Videodrome to me in so many ways, just with regard to the conspiracy plot and like down to the character of Guy Pearce. It's just like the other guy, his cohort in Videodrome. So it's just like I love the way his career. He's just he's a perfect definition of an auteur to me because he's got such like I make movies about like one thing only, and then every movie is about that. But like that's not true. There's body horror, there's literary adaptations, but through them all, there's the singular theme, and I just think it's so cool that I get to live in a time where David Cronenberg just put out 2 movies in a row after not making them for a while. I think Crimes of the Future is major. I think this is just as major. I didn't think it was just as major at first. It took me 3 viewings to get to, oh, this is just as big a movie to me as Crimes of the Future, which was another one that was like self-reflexive and looking back on his career, but in very different ways. And that movie was also funny. And I think a lot of people don't understand. I don't say understand. Don't appreciate the humor or have the same sense of humor as him. Whereas like I'm cracking up throughout this movie and at the conspiracy that happens in Crimes of the Future and Kristen Stewart's character in Crimes of the Future. But like I'm laughing throughout this movie with people constantly telling him not to crash his Tesla that's self-driving and stuff like that. It's just like I don't know. I sound like a rambling lunatic. I'm talking about my favorite filmmaker making a new movie. It's tough. But I am delighted to report that I am, of course, a 4 out of 4 on the Shrouds. And I don't think it's a case of, like, sycophant. I just love the guy, so I think it's fantastic. I think that the movie is as great as I think it is, but I don't think everyone will agree with me. And I think you really have to be steeped in Cronenberg's work to appreciate it. Although I have read a few reviews on Letterboxd of people that are like, this is my first Cronenberg, and I just think it's so profound. So I think that's really cool, too. So yeah, this movie's not for everyone. I think there's so much going on. It requires multiple viewings, and a lot of people will be bored out of their skulls because this movie's all dialogue. But if you're into the cold, detached Cronenbergian style, this movie is dripping in it, and I loved it so much, and I can't wait to watch it again.
And I don't mean to rain on your parade, but yeah, I'm one of those people who didn't appreciate it as much. I'm giving the Shrouds 2 stars, Brett. Sorry, but yep, that's
okay.
where I'm at. Yep,
that is okay.
I know.
It is like a really. When I saw it, I was like, "This." I think I said in my first log, "This is for the Cronenberg heads only."
Yeah.
Like this isn't a mainstream appeal, and that's what great art should be. I love that he's just making what he wants to make with no regard for, is it commercially viable? Which is
like Sinners.
Like Sinners. It's a good week for movies, I think, with those two. And let's move on to disappointing things. Let's talk about The Wedding Banquet, the remake of the Ang Lee film from what, 1991, I believe?
93.
93. Ang Lee, University of Illinois graduate, my alma mater. Here's a trailer for Wedding Banquet. This one's made by Andrew Ahn, who did the indie hit Driveways and Fire Island, also with Bowen Yang, who's in this movie alongside Lily Gladstone and Kelly Marie Tran. Here's the trailer.
A baby's gonna change everything.
I'll teach the baby art, and Chris will change the diapers. You're giving me poop?
He would be such a good mom.
So would you.
Doesn't matter if it's Lee or me, because we don't have the money.
His visa runs out in a few months and he doesn't want to go back to Korea.
My grandmother doesn't know I'm gay.
You come out, they cut you off.
I have a proposal. You marry me, and I'll pay for Liz to grow a baby.
What?
Me? My daughter marrying a man.
It's for the cause. We're helping a gay couple stay together.
Delete all of it?
All of it. Every Pride Parade photo, every National Coming Out Day post.
Can I still post Instagram stories?
Do you want grandchildren?
I'll delete Instagram now.
This movie was very disappointing because I really love The Wedding Banquet. It's such a great farce with a great premise, and this movie undercuts it on purpose. This movie sets up the original Wedding Banquet and bats it down within moments, like on purpose. It's like a joke. I think the movie thinks it's funny that it's doing that. That it's like, hey, remember the premise of that? What if the grandma knew right away? So the whole premise is blown up. And then what happens is the movie overcomplicates everything to the point of first of all, I never bought the relationships. The performances are not very good in this. I never bought the relationships, which makes the whole, like, Bowen Yang refuses to marry the person he loves stuff just not really go over or make any sense to me at all. They don't do a very good job of explaining, like, why wouldn't you just marry the guy? And instead it's this convoluted, like, he's going to marry her to appease them. And then it gets overcomplicated with, like, actual sex and stuff. And it's just, it completely loses sight of what I thought it was about. And I know it's supposed to be like, it's 30 years later. There's new queerdom is different. It's different to be gay now. But, like, just in terms of being an entertaining movie that people are saying I saw the trailer say it's funny and irresistibly sweet and stuff. It's not funny. I didn't laugh once the entire movie. And it's just kind of off-putting. All the characters are, like, mopey in a way that I found off-putting. And I just was confounded that people would walk away from this and go, like, that was fun and delightful. I'm like, they just turned a fun and delightful thing into melodrama. That's what I just found it really disappointing.
Yeah, it's very strange that, I mean, the Wedding Banquet, the original one, the 93 one, is very much of its time, but it also feels ahead of its time too when you watch it, because it's, where that film goes in terms of the relationship between the son and his parents and his, the guy that he loves. It changes things, it flips everything on its head in a way that is nice and pleasant and warm and all that fun stuff. This is weird because there's no reason in this current age for these characters to go through this charade, except for a character. When you were right, you said that the grandmother finds out that her grandson is gay, and that kind of negates the entire idea of putting on this fake wedding, except for a character who's not even in the movie. Apparently his grandfather is deeply homophobic and would disown him if he found out, but we never see that character for any reason. The character doesn't even appear, like, in a phone call.
Yeah.
Like, so you're sitting there like, what are the actual stakes of doing this? What is the actual purpose of doing this sham wedding? And you're right, the character motivations don't make much sense either. And then you have you said that it got rid of that one thing, which kind of, I think it does negate the entire purpose of the plot. But it also raises the other, like, most questionable thing about the 93 film, and it does it so early, almost as if it's trying to get it out of the way instead of trying to find a way to reinvent it, which is the relationship between Bowen Yang's character and Kelly Marie Tran's character. They knew each other from college and they dated before they came out, and there's a whole thing that comes up, like, almost immediately that becomes another complication that all the characters have to navigate around eventually. It is all melodrama, you're right. and it doesn't feel as if it's doing it for comedy. It's not doing like a sitcom sort of thing. It's doing
No,
it very seriously.
it's actively swatting down every sitcom
Yeah.
part of it, which made
Yep.
but then at the same time, it embraces it later on in ways that I didn't appreciate. I would say it's very sitcom-y by the end of like what happens with the characters.
Yep.
But it's not treated like comedy.
Yeah. I was surprised how many jokes it has at the expense of the original film. Like there's just a couple of things that it just is like making fun of, like, oh, that's not important. Like, where do you stand at the wedding at City Hall? It like does a little like poke at that for some reason. Um it's just weird. It's just weird that the movie doesn't seem to really like the original. It thinks it can do what the original did better, and it definitely doesn't. And I think the core of it is just there are too many characters, there are too many plot-based complications to really get to know these characters. And so by the end of it, you don't really care what happens to these characters. It kind of ignores Lily Gladstone once her entire thing about wanting to become pregnant through IVF, once that's all set up. Her character basically is thrown into the background. I would say the same thing goes for Bowen Yang's character. Once you set up, yeah, that he doesn't want to marry the guy he loves because he doesn't feel good enough because of some family stuff that is very vaguely presented and developed that you don't understand. It like, well, wait, what happened there, and why is the cousin involved? What is going on here? It's too much to try to be either a comedy or a serious drama, because it's not funny when you're taking all this seriously and you're introducing all of these things, and it doesn't work as, a serious drama because it's all about the complications that with characters that you don't get to know. Yeah, it's very disappointing, especially being a remake of a fine romantic comedy that has a reason for doing what it's doing with the whole setup. But even on its own, it's too messy.
Yeah, it's also people just it's a movie where people tell things instead of show things, like constantly. Like I feel like they didn't show me anything, and they're always just talking about their feelings. So it just was really frustrating. It also didn't have any rhythm to it. So like I know I say that a lot, but like it's such a basic thing. But when a movie doesn't have it, you really notice it. And this movie was just flat to me. Like it was just like when a movie doesn't have rhythm, it feels endless and flat. And it did have that quality to me, where it was just like kind of like checking your watch constantly type of energy. So yeah, I really didn't like it. It's a 2-star movie for me.
Yeah, 2 stars for me for The Wedding Banquet as well.
What a bummer. Like that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't both dislike this movie so much.
I liked On's. I liked his Driveways, and I liked Fire Island too.
Me too.
Fire Island was a really fun romantic comedy that took Jane Austen and did something neat with it. But yeah, I don't know. The original is fine on its own, even today.
Yeah.
The only problem with the original is that it's impossible to find.
Is that right? I actually when I checked my Letterboxd log, I noticed that it was a Netflix DVD screener that I had got, or a Netflix DVD mail DVD when I had that. So yeah, it must be hard to find if I had to get it by mail from Netflix in the year 2023 or whatever. All right, next up we have Dead Mail, which I believe is on Shudder straight up directly. Doing. Yeah, there's we have a Shudder this week that I think is in theaters, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this one is going straight to Shudder, and I caught it at a horror festival last year, and I watched it again, and I'm excited to talk about it. The movie's called Dead Mail. Here's the trailer. Mark, even though I'm gonna recommend this movie, and I really do like it, I think it's very good. I think it's undeniable that something happens after the first act where it's just like, fuck, that was so cool. The setup for this movie is so much more interesting than the movie that transpires after the setup. And so much so that I think it actually is it could be used for franchise purposes. Like you could do this as a TV series or as a movie where each movie that you're watching or each episode is like a new piece of mail that they're investigating. But please tell me the setup that I'm so disappointed the movie eventually pretty quickly elides and then becomes something else. But I do think it's still cool, but it's just it's less cool. It's just so undeniably, what a fucking cool premise. Why isn't this the whole thing? Why don't you make the whole thing out of the black box?
I'm completely yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm exactly in the same boat as you. I'm just a little less enthusiastic about everything that follows it, mainly because it starts off with a guy who has been abducted in a house, in a ranch house in the middle of nowhere in rural Illinois, gets a manages to get a piece of mail into a mailbox that just says, "Help, I've been kidnapped. This is the street I'm on, and this is what the house looks like, and please help me." And it goes to the dead letters department of the local post office. And so there's an investigator who can figure out everything about mail based on, and this is set in the 1980s, so it's really cool. So you're just watching this guy like go through encyclopedias and atlases and calling this mysterious man in, I believe it's Denmark,
Yeah.
who has access to like an entire database of stuff. It's it's so cool just watching this investigation unfold of this guy trying to figure out where these dead letters came from and how he can get them back to the people that they're supposed to get to. And then it becomes just the entire thing about how the guy got kidnapped, why the guy got kidnapped, how, you know, how eccentric and completely weird the guy who kidnapped him is. And it's interesting. And I think the performances are fine. And I think it's shot well and it has a sense of momentum and you're learning things as it goes. And it does eventually kind of return back to the initial premise just with, from a
Yeah.
different angle. But man, it's just disappointing after you get something that feels so unique and feels like, yeah, this is a character I'm interested in. This is a process I'm interested in. This is an entire mystery that I want to see solved in this
And
way. And
like
how are they going to do it?
there's
And
also
then,
like a not like a haha laugh out loud humor to it, but the fact that like something so mundane is treated like it's
yeah,
like top level secrecy, like, or not even secrecy, it is secrecy, but it's also top level importance. Like, this guy's job is to get these dead letters to their people. Someone lost a necklace in the mail, I'm gonna do everything I possibly could to get it back to them. There's something like just humorous about that in the way that the
yeah,
movie
but
treats
that's
it. Like,
because
yeah,
yeah,
go
but
ahead.
it's important to him. And that's why the
Yes.
character is so interesting because it is important to him. This is his job. This is what he wants to do. He wants to help people and do that. It's
Yeah.
That's what makes the character compelling and that's what makes the whole situation compelling. It's like, yeah, this is neat to watch how this happens and I'm invested in it because it's a cool process to watch and I like this character and how invested he is in it. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like anyone who watches this has to feel that way about it because it's such a unique and exciting opening for what it ultimately becomes a pretty basic kidnapping serial killer thing. But man, those details are so fun and specific that I'm like fully on board recommending it anyway. But I do have like, I mean, that had to be the whole conversation. It
it
was,
did. Yeah, it
man,
really did.
wouldn't it be awesome if it were just about this process and this guy? But I guess I don't know what that even would. I mean, I guess I
Oh,
honestly could watch a whole movie of just what the beginning was, and I would be happy.
I think it still could work. You need to, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not trying to give script notes to a movie that actually exists. I just think that this story could exist the way it does, maybe with a little less of the whole stuff of them being inside the house. Clearly, you would need to adjust something that happens in the first act. Um, but it does eventually return. Like I said, it does eventually return to trying to unravel the mystery by way of the post office and all of that stuff. And that's compelling. I think it just spends way too much time with the weirdo, with the synthesizer obsession and all that. And I like that it's weird, and I like that it kind of taps into this sense of loneliness and isolation that all these characters feel. That's interesting, but it's just not anywhere near as compelling as the first act. The first act is so good.
It's like first act of the year good. Like, I love it. Like, I think it's like, I can't think of a better first act of any movie this year. I think it's so cool. So yeah, I'm a very solid 3 stars, but like, if they followed on the thread of the first act, this could have been like a 4-star cool movie. But it's still a cool movie. It's just a less cool movie than it could have been. But I mean, you have to give them credit for coming up with it in the first place. Like, it's very
Yeah.
cool.
Oh yeah.
And they came
Yep.
up with it.
Oh
So
yeah.
I hope they mine it for another movie, or like hear the feedback that I'm sure everybody will have, and then like make another one with that scenario and
Yeah.
that character.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm slightly less enthusiastic. 2.5 stars on Dead Male.
Fair enough. And next up, another Shudder movie. This one's in theaters now, will be on VOD before it makes it to Shudder eventually. It's called The Ugly Stepsister, and it's a new take on a familiar tale. That's all I'll say for now, but we'll get into what that means in a second. Here's the trailer. Frankly, that was the most upsetting part of the movie to me, right there. The antiquated...
I think there's a more upsetting part that follows shortly after.
Oh, sure,
anyway,
sure. There definitely is. There's a lot more to come in that regard. But that moment, if you didn't watch, it was like how would you say it? An antiquated, old school
rhinoplasty.
Victorian version of a rhinoplasty of someone getting a nose job, and they just show it to you, and it's really gross to watch. And this movie does a lot of that, showing you things that are really gross to watch. Mark, I'm going to go ahead and say it now. This has more tapeworms than any other adaptation of Cinderella that I've ever seen. Do you think so too?
I believe it might.
Okay, you're not going
to
commit.
It's too bad. I don't. I can't. I'm trying to think of some other ones, and I don't remember any singing tapeworms in the Disney one.
No,
or even ones
definitely
that help.
not.
Although that would have been interesting if they.
It would have been cute, I think. If
like you have the battle, like the mice are. I believe it's mice helping out Cinderella with her dress, and then you have the ugly stepsisters as just tapeworms helping them put together. That would be.
You did just improve the animated classic Cinderella.
I think I might have.
But
I think I might have.
Anyway, tell me about The Ugly Stepsister. I just gave it away. It's like Cinderella, but with a twist.
Yeah, it's a story of Cinderella seen from the perspective of one of the quote-unquote ugly stepsisters. So she is, she just wants love. She falls in love with the prince too because the prince wrote a book of poems that she really likes. She wants to marry the prince. She has all the dreams that, your average, like, sort of Disney fairy tale princess would have. But she has braces, and her mother treats her like she's ugly, and so she develops this complex that she is not good enough, that she doesn't look good enough, that her personality isn't good enough, all this stuff. And eventually, because of the way that the mother pushes her to improve, quote unquote, the way that her face looks and her body looks, does become ugly by the end because of all the things that she's going through. And she eventually puts a lot of stuff on herself, like tapeworms, for example. She inflicts a lot of things on herself to try to make herself more beautiful. And it's horrifying. It's really disturbing to watch, but it has a purpose, and that purpose is it's just plainly to say, like, beauty standards for women in olden times, in present times, in all times, completely unreasonable. And why are we doing this to people? What is this? Why is society like this? And it just puts it right in your face with these just horrific visions that I think work really well. One, because they are genuinely terrifying and horrifying to watch, but also because it's probably truer to the original Grimm Brothers fairy tale than any other adaptation has been, because that Grimm Brothers adaptation story is pretty appropriately grim and grisly. I think the biggest credit I can give to this is that even seeing everything that it was doing in terms of, like, the rhinoplasty and other cosmetic surgery and the stuff with the tapeworms, and knowing that, there's what's going to come if it's going to follow through on the Grimm Brothers fairy tale, where it eventually gets to, it still surprised me.
Me too.
What she ends up doing when she has the
Even
slipper.
though it seems so obvious in hindsight, I feel like. But I also was like,
but it's so shocking up until then. That it's like, that makes it makes complete logical sense why the character would do that, because of everything else she put herself through and she's been put through. But also it just surprised me, like, that's right. That's the ending of the story. That's right. Because I've had to look away a couple of times at some of this stuff already, and why not throw that in there too?
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely similar to, like, something like The Substance, and The Substance, even though it's longer, feels shorter than this. I feel like this one just, like, I don't know, doesn't have that frenetic quality that The Substance has. But I was very much enjoying it, and I appreciated, like, I feel like it's maybe that's not true. I was gonna say you often don't see, like, the sense of humor type of thing in the Victorian era, which isn't true, because I feel like Yorgos Lanthimos, that's this whole thing. Like, The Favorite was funny because, look, we're all saying fuck in this old time or whatever. But in this, it was like they're all, the comedy of the courtship, like it's treated like a dating show. like this contestant likes long walks type of thing. Like it is funny too, and I appreciated that. Um, so yeah, I was like, I don't want to say I was like mildly underwhelmed with this, but I feel like if I was comparing it to The Substance, I would say that. But otherwise, you know, darkly funny, commenting on beauty standards and how they haven't changed, and doesn't flinch from showing you things that you probably don't want to see. So I gotta give it up for that. It's a very solid 3-star horror movie, body horror specifically, on an episode about Cronenberg, and he's not the one with the body horror movie. I guess that movie is also. You could
Right.
call it that if you wanted to. Anyway, 3 stars for me for The Ugly Stepsister.
Yeah, but Brett, what's important for me is that it actually is showing you these things that you don't want to see, and it is making a very
Yeah.
salient point by doing that. I'm not just saying like this is more than just a body horror show. It does have points to make, and it makes them well, and it subverts that fairy tale to make you look at these characters in a way that, if it just makes you rethink like every adaptation of Cinderella ever, because if this is what it was like for those other characters in those stories, well, you have some sympathy for them. But yeah, 3 stars for me too for The Ugly Stepsister.
All right. In theaters now, on video on demand after that, and on Shudder eventually. That's how those releases work. And this one somehow is in theaters, I think. This last movie, despite looking like I made it on my computer, despite having no animation experience whatsoever, it is a very ugly looking animated movie that has some of the laziest vocal work I've heard. Martin Lawrence, I think someone on Letterboxd said like Martin Lawrence's like Zoloft performance or something, or just like monotone, barely trying. Anyway, Sneaks, a movie about shoes. Here's the trailer.
Once a year, sneakerheads come together for the largest convention this side of the Hudson River.
The Sneakerhead Gala.
I go by the name of Mustard. Who's ready to party? Please welcome CP3, Chris Paul.
Congratulations to our winner.
I get the ticket. I won. These shoes, they're going to change everything.
Stay right here.
Ah, a foot. He put his foot inside me. Ugh.
I like him.
My shoes.
We're being kidnapped.
We're being kicknapped because they're shoes.
I missed that one.
Yeah, me too. Thank God for the subtitles on that one. A lot of shoe puns in this movie, which, Mark, I have to say it right now up top. This movie is Toy Story 2. It's Toy Story shoe. It's just a Toy Story, but instead of toys, it's shoes. And there's almost an interesting idea there about like the shoe that like wants to be itself and be worn versus the shoe that wants to sit on the shelf and be collected. But these dynamics were explored better in a film that I already mentioned called Toy Story 2. So I don't really know what it serves. I kind of took it back as I was saying it. It's a bad movie, man. It looks bad. It's really annoying. Although that original song that was playing in the trailer that opens the movie is stuck in my head. The "My sneaks can do anything." So
Isn't it, by anything I mean anything? Isn't that the rest of the lyric, or did I just create that in my head?
No,
Like,
I think
okay.
you're right. It is. It does
Which is
seem
why
yada
it's
yada
so
yada
catchy.
like everything else
Yeah.
about this movie.
Yeah, this is, if you don't have Toy Story 2, if you've never seen Toy Story 2, this might surprise you. It will, if you've seen any animated movie in the past like 5 years, it will surprise you how cheap it looks and how shoddy the animation is. I think it's trying to go for that style that like the most recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies did, where it's, kind of intentionally choppy to a degree just to make it look, I don't know, to give it like
distinctive,
a certain,
yeah, right.
distinct look. I think it's just choppy though. I think it's just
Yeah,
the
it wasn't
animation
finished
was-
rendering when they uploaded
Yeah,
it.
yeah, because everything else in it doesn't look great. Like the shoes are bland. The city, the New York City looks completely unfinished. There's the reflective surfaces are just solid matte colors. It's like it's cheap. It was made on the cheap. And you know what? Fine. You don't have the budget. You spent all the budget to get Anthony Mackie, Martin Lawrence, Lawrence Fishburne, Who else is in this? There's a lot of names that you're probably not
A lot of
expecting from
rappers
something
like
this.
Quavo and Mustard, the DJ.
Yeah, Chloe
who's
Bailey, Macy
yeah,
Gray.
yeah,
There's a lot of musicians in it, but still, they spent the budget on that stuff. Apparently, Keith David. I forgot Keith
yeah,
David is
yeah.
OG, the
That's right.
original.
Yes.
The original. Wait, that's the OG doesn't fit in this context. It's a shoe. He's not. There's no word for shoe. Never mind. Whatever. Here's the thing. I did not think I would say the movie that is trying to sell shoes should be more of a blatant advertisement, but it really should, because there's like two brands that are highlighted in this movie, I think.
Yeah.
And that says something that no other shoe brand said, yeah, let's come on board this movie that will give us basically free advertising for our shoes. They're like, no, please don't put our name associated with this thing. That's how bad it is. But at least if we had had that, we could have had some good looking shoes on display. But instead, we just have these like generic ones. I think in the Wikipedia article, I think the Anthony Mackie shoe is called a white shoe, and the Martin Lawrence one is called a black shoe, just because there's no name brand associated with them. They're just shoes. They're just high tops. It's like, okay,
that
it's
speaks
not
to
good.
the cheapness quality to it. You know, they used to sell like cartoons at McDonald's. Like why? Like Foot Locker deserves that, right? Like Foot Locker deserves their own. Like, oh, you can buy this animated movie on DVD for $10 when you buy your shoes. That's what this feels like. It does not feel like a real movie, and yet it exists, and we watched it, and I got a screener for it. It's crazy.
It's like in theaters across the country.
Yeah. I mean, were you thinking Toy Story 2 also? I mean, you have to.
Yeah,
right?
because there's even the collector's, like collection room kind of has the same vibe as the, what was his name? Al? Was it Al?
Yeah.
The
Wayne Knight. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also just think we all remember him as just Wayne Knight because that was memorable. Yeah, Toy Story 2 is a great movie. That's what this reminds me.
It is.
Like, I should rewatch Toy Story 2. I think those are all pretty good.
Yeah, they're all great.
I haven't rewatched 4 ever, but I like.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry. The original trilogy is great.
Yes,
4 is fine. 4 is fine.
Yeah,
but
4
it's
was
not...
fine, but I remember 3. Did I ever tell the story to you, Mark, where I was working at the Evanston movie theater when they did like a really early screening of Toy Story 3, but it was only the first half an hour. So it was like the first reel or first 2 reels or something. And it was when I was a 35 millimeter projectionist, and they had Disney guys, like Disney suits, in the projection booth, like standing near me the whole night to make sure that like I didn't steal a frame of Toy Story 2. Or like, so like when I built the print, they were standing there, and when I broke it down right after it screened, they were standing there the whole time just to make sure that I didn't fuck up Toy Story 3, I believe it was. Anyway, 35 millimeter projection, not really a thing anymore. It's boutique, a special item. Anyway, Sneaks is bad, so bad that I'm talking about projection booth times from 15
for the second time on the show, we're talking about projection, and this the first time was like with a purpose, because it was how a movie looks, a good looking movie looks. This is just to try to distract us from the fact that Sneaks is really bad.
Yeah, Sneaks is really bad. I mean, if your kid likes shoes and is interested, like maybe there's something there, but I don't know. It's pretty bleak. You will not enjoy it, the adults in the room. It's a 1 where you're at?
Yeah, I'm at 1 star. Yep.
All right, I'm at 1.5 just to differentiate. I don't know. That song is good. My sneaks can do anything. If I can find it, I'll end the podcast with that song. I don't know if it's available.
That'll be the copyright strike we get on YouTube. Is that one?
Yeah, they boot us off. All right. Well, that's the end of the show, but we have at least one review to read, Mark, or a couple actually. So on Apple Podcasts, FrizzleFry23, which I hope and believe to be a reference to Primus, a great band, their debut album, a great album, terrific album. Anyway, excellent pod. I grew up with Siskel and Ebert and the subsequent variations of that show. It sparked my love of movies. This podcast is something I look forward to every week in the same way. The current format of right to the reviews, then banter at the end is perfect. Out of curiosity, why no sponsors? I only ask because I want you to succeed and make a living from the great work you do. Thanks. You know what? That's one of the great questions of our time. A great question. Why don't we have sponsors? You should. Any people who want to, put your product on here, we're open to it. We are open to sponsorships. This is a very DIY podcast. I appreciate that people think we make a living on this show. It is definitely done out of love of the game more than making money, although I would love to make money on it. So if anybody knows how to do that for us, help us. We're just public access style putting it out there right now.
Yeah, we're in the PBS era of the show.
Yeah. Hopefully we're going to thrive really soon then, apparently, and get bought out and go national. That would be really exciting. There was also a comment on YouTube on our Minecraft episode from Doozle Dumbler 5393, who said this show is super underrated, deserves way more subs. By the way, where are we supposed to leave reviews? I left one on Apple Podcasts, but you haven't seen it. It might be because non-US reviews don't show up in there, and you only see the US reviews. Anyways, you'll be pleased to know you have 2 5-star reviews in Australia. So I checked into how to figure this out, and I was able to find the Australia review, and I will read it. So this is Meister Eckhart, who I assume is also Doozle Dumber 5393 or whatever. They said best movie reviews. I asked Siri to find me a movie review podcast, and this show popped up. Thanks, Siri, for finding it for me. I've binge listened to a year's worth of it in a week, but totally forgot to write down all the films I was interested in, so we'll have to listen to the podcast again. Top stuff, guys. What a amazing endorsement that you want to listen to it again. Thank you so much. Really cool that Siri knew to give the podcast to you. That's news to me. Glad to know Siri's a fan. Maybe we'll have Siri on the show in the future. Review some movies. There's a lot. Maybe Megan 2. Maybe we'll have Siri on for Megan 2. That seems like a good time to have Siri on the show. Anything else, Mark, to talk about before we shove off?
No, it's going to be a busy week next week. I know that much.
Oh, I know. I know. I think I've seen the big ones.
Wait, why am I apologizing? It's not my fault. Everybody's putting out movies next week.
It's not your fault, but when I see 12 posters on your website, it does feel like your fault. At some point, I'm like,
yeah, you know what? Yeah, it does. Well, I mean, part of that is we were supposed to review a certain movie this week that we kind of teased at. Where I'm not going to say what it is, but I was barred from reviewing it this week. I'm just going to flat out say I was barred from reviewing it this week for some reason. So we're not reviewing it this week. We'll review it next week.
Yeah,
So
I used it
part
as an opportunity to skip the screening, and I'll find time to see it.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out for both of us probably, except that next week we're gonna have like The Accountant 2. Let's see what else.
Is Until Dawn next week?
Until Dawn is next week, but they are not screening it here, so I'll have.
They
to see
weirdly weren't screening it for critics here either, but they were screening it for regular people, and I got invited as a regular person, and not a press, and I got in that way, and they were kind of
I
annoyed
am also
at me.
a regular person.
Yeah, send Mark a regular person invite to that. There's basically Brooklyn Horror Festival. If you've ever been there, they put you on a list, and when they want to do like seat fillers, they send to that email list. So there's been 3 screenings that way for Until Dawn in New York City, and there have been 0 for press. I asked for it, and they said no, and then I accepted via that, and she kind of, I feel like, annoyingly emailed me back saying, I saw you RSVP to this. Here's the embargo information. Like, they were not happy that I saw it, even though, spoiler alert, I liked it. It was fine. Like, I don't know why they're treating it like that. But
I played the game. I liked the game.
Yeah, it's a Larry Fessenden written game.
Anyway.
Perfect timing. There's my screaming baby.
Perfect.
We're
we'll
done.
have those and more.
Yes, those and more next week. Goodbye.